hello, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to all our friends from us. We actually had people streaming in from other than Australia, America, the UK, Europe. It was really quite amazing to see the reach and exciting to connect with people from all over the globe. So welcome to everybody. And I hope that everybody is keeping safe and is well with everything that's going on. I know that it looks like we are getting a little bit of control over this situation, but we're nowhere near out of the woods yet. So please, everybody, make sure that you are staying safe, following guidelines and all that sort of thing. That's just the doctor in me. I can't help myself. Okay, so the reason why I'm doing this live stream today this way, I just wanted to put you in the picture before we get into the deep stuff that we're going to talk about today. I'm very excited to go through that, actually. My name is Hercules, and I have a background in neuroscience, psychology, medicine, and surgery. I've spent the last 20 years really helping people find their Hercules, their inner hero, so to speak, the person that allows them to unlock the life that they're meant to live. And that's given me a lot of joy and a lot of satisfaction over the years, and a huge, huge desire to give something back in this moment. Because I think, as I said in the last live stream, in this moment, we have been given an opportunity, despite all the difficulties, despite everything that's going on, we have been given an opportunity, and it's really important for us to appreciate that, even though we're going through difficult times. So in that first, we spoke about going into the cocoon, right? And was this going to be a prison or was this going to be a cocoon? And the decision that we were going to make personally. And a lot of you actually wrote down cocoon, either in direct message or in the Facebook group. And I loved that. But I knew at that point that if we were going to do that, we have to talk about what it feels like to be in the cocoon at some point. And that's kind of what we're going to do today. So what today's presentation is really about is, what does it feel like to really go through transformation? Because, I've worked with people and with organizations, and I'm sure some people on the call have as well, where, any kind of change is so difficult to do that you kind of sometimes you just give up. It's just too complex. And then when you try to persist, it becomes more complex. So change is difficult in any context. But if we have some clues about what it might feel like to personally go through constructive change to achieve a particular outcome, and in this case, coming to terms with some of the things in ourself, then the whole process becomes a little bit easier, because our expectations are more realistic, and in fact, they will support us. So before we get started, and I'm really keen to get into this, if you haven't already, please join the Face group. All you need to do is go to iamhercules.community. I have put an image in there that we will be using going through this presentation. So the basis of the presentation, there is an image in there, which is actually an X-ray. It's actually an MRI. Particular person, and there's no name, so there's all confidentiality and is intact. But the reason I thought of doing this, and why you're looking at hopefully an MRI of the brain, is because a few days ago, I was called into hospital to an emergency, because all we can do now is emergencies. As a lot of you know, elective surgery has shut down. And this emergency was an elderly person who was progressively less and less able to walk, and she was someone who was otherwise very, very well and handling life very, very well, but was finding it difficult, more and more difficult to actually walk. And once examination and investigations were done, this MRI was done, what you're seeing there is a normal brain and a brain, right? And this lady was found to have a brain tumor, right? And I thought to myself, you know, I spend all this time talking about brain function and neuroscience and the psychology and how we change and so on. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny, or not funny in that sense, but funny in inverted commas, interesting, perhaps a better word, to look at the brain as it's going through its transformation. So we're looking at a brain there, and you see the difference between a normal brain and a brain with a brain tumor in it. If we were to look at that brain from the outside, and if you bear with me, we'll pretend we're doctors together and go through this together and analyze it. And then I'll bring this into how we can use some of the insights. But if you look at the brain there, you will see that, the brain with the brain tumor in it, you couldn't tell from the outside that there's a brain tumor. You can see in both those people, the person who has a normal, brain and the person who has a brain with a tumor, is just the skull, and there's nothing that you could detect from the outside, right? So the other thing to note there is that the amount of room that that brain tumor is taking up, if you think about the amount of space it's taking up, the amount of energy it's using, the resources that it's using from the body to feed itself, to grow, right? And just the sheer room that it's taking up. And you can see that it's, in actual fact, it's squashing the normal brain, the brain itself, it's squashing it to the side to make room for itself. Okay. And that happens incrementally, that happens little by little. So we're not able to perceive any major changes in a patient until they're really obvious, until this brain tumor has become, this size in this particular tumor. So I know some of you have, knowledge of these sorts of things. So just go with me and simplify this. I know there's different types of tumors that behave differently, but for the sake of this argument, let's just work with this kind of tumor, which perhaps might be a meningioma or something like that, which is just squashing the brain, the normal brain tissue, and creating functional deficits that we're otherwise not aware of, until it gets to a certain point where it becomes obvious. So once this has been determined, we know that that tumor has to be removed, which is what we did the other day. So the process of removing the tumor requires that person to give up complete control, to go under general anesthetic, where an expert can work undisturbed to get rid of that tumor. So that process happens, the tumor is removed, and then after the surgery, there is a rehabilitation period, right? And the rehabilitation period is quite interesting because, a person gets used to feeling a certain way with the tumor. They slowly adapt to decreased function and other sorts of things. So it feels a little bit weird for there to be now this gap, this void in the head. And the body really doesn't know how to respond to that immediately. Okay, so it requires a lot of faith, as it takes time for the brain swelling to go down, for the brain, the healthy brain, to start to re-expand and to try to fill that space, for all the right connections to be made so that the whole body can come into function again. And for example, in the case of that, to start to work again, because obviously the tumor had been squashing the part of the brain which is involved in, moving the legs. So once that happens, the patient then needs to go through the process of finding their feet, if you'll pardon the pun. They'll slowly get the confidence to walk without fear. Then they're going to fall a little bit, and then they're going to walk again. And finally, they'll be able to trust their legs, and they can even run. Okay. So after that after the rehabilitation period, there's a sense of relief, a sense of gratitude, and really for the first time, that person can appreciate just how much was affected by that tumor, beyond the use of the legs, right? So if you if that'll give me a thumbs up in the just put a little thumbs up in a comment in YouTube, or in the Facebook group, and I'll keep moving forwards just in case that's not clear. So the idea there is that we have the brain. It's got all of this stuff that's happening to it because of one lump that's sitting inside it. And there's all of this process that we have to go through to get the brain functioning well again, so that the rest of the body can function as well. So here's the interesting part of this. Yes, I'm getting all these comments. Yes, good, makes sense, Doc. Thanks, Doc. Thanks for your. Okay, well, that's great. So what I want to do now is to think about us and to go back and connect the first live stream to this one. Some of us made the decision to go in the cocoon to change a few things. What we've got to realize that the things that we're trying to change, our issues, so to speak, or the issue that we're working on, or whatever it might be, it's like a lump taking up room that isn't serving us, right? It's like a lump that is taking up room that isn't serving us. So it's a bit like the brain tumor is to the brain. And in the same way, it's not obvious from the outside. You know, you can't tell by looking at a person. When we put up our front, we put up our walls, we put up the persona that we get through life, put up the brave face, whatever it might be, that gets us through and keeps us functioning in the areas that we can control. But then we know that there's this lump, if you like, using up our resources underneath that no one else can see. And sometimes we can't see it either, right? It takes up space, it takes up energy, and it affects our function. The interesting thing about having issues that we're not dealing with is that they actually affect our function. And most of us don't think that that is the case. The reason we don't think that is the case is because we've adapted in the same way that a person can adapt to having lesser leg function with a brain tumor, right? And think that they're just getting old, for example. It's in this way that we also might, adapt with what is ever going on, whatever's going on inside of us, to realize the extent of what's going on. So the insidious nature of holding on to stuff that we haven't worked on is that we start to live life with it. We start to adapt with the energy that is left over after our issues have taken all the energy that they're taking. And we start to think that whatever is possible for us is possible only on the basis of what we think we have, the resources that we think we have that are available to us. What we don't realize is that a lot more is available to us that is currently being expended for things that really that don't serve us, that we wouldn't hold on to if we were aware of them. Just like the brain tumor to the brain. Okay? Cocoon, to remove these problems, to remove these issues, this requires giving up control, right? In the same way that a person has to go into surgery and they have to go into general anesthetic and they have to submit themselves to a process that is a little bit clinical, unemotional, but will get the job done. We also have to go into a space where we get a little bit clinical, where we see things objectively and give up the control that we have, that we hold on to, the things that we hold on to, so that we can actually make the shifts that we need to make. This, of course, means incredible vulnerability, right? It means being vulnerable. It means being humble, and it means not holding on to what we currently think is making us feel powerful and secure, moving towards what scares us. Because if you're going to go into the cocoon, you're going to get ripped apart. And as scary as that sounds, it only sounds scary from this side. On the other side, of course, it's a wonderful experience and you've never been happier, but it does feel very, very frightening for a lot of people to relinquish that control, even for some slight issues that they may be thinking about, that they've wanted to work on for a long time. So that's the surgery part. Then what about after surgery? What about, when we're coming out of the cocoon, as it were? Well, it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel different. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It doesn't feel fantastic once you've changed your point of view about something, or changed your approach or your attitude or your behavior, or are trying to set new habits. For example, initially, it feels terrible because all the things that you've set in place to keep you going, all the things that you have used to protect yourself, are now being pulled apart and being discarded because they're no longer part of you. They're no longer necessary. So you won't know what to do with yourself immediately. You've got to sit with a void. You've got to sit in faith with a void, waiting for your brain, as it were, in inverted commas, to re-expand, right? For yourself to re-expand and to fill the void, the hole, authentically. The mistake that a lot of us make at this point, and the big danger that I see once people get to this point, is that they think, oh, I can now fill that hole with something that I want. And all that does is create another tumor, because you're still, and the patience that it requires for your true self, your healthy brain tissue, let's put it that way, to re-expand into that space, and for you to experience your brain whole with its functions, with its normal function. For you to experience yourself whole with your normal functioning, the way, with all your resources and talents and everything, the special way that your brain works, because every brain is like a fingerprint, right? We're all very, very unique. And what we have to bring to the world is wonderful, but it requires our whole self. We can't just do something in the world to get something. For example, we have to be something and then do something to then get something to then offer something. That's the authentic sequence, but more about that later. You have allowed that space, you can sit the discomfort of that space in the re-expanded state, so to speak. You're going to learn how to rehabilitate yourself. You're going to have to learn how to rely on the fact that you've got new reflexes, you've got new thoughts, you've got new habits that you can use. You're not in the habit of using those habits, right? So you've got all this wonderful stuff that's going to come up for you, and you won't yet know its full value until you start using it in the world. And once you see the effect of this now new, healed state, that's the first time you'll really, really feel the relief, the happiness, the gratitude, the peace, because that's the first time you'll have a true appreciation of what you now have, what was yours all along, that your stuff was stopping you from having. So I want to open it up for discussion. I don't know if we have, pardon me with all of the technology. I'm trying my best to, this is my very first attempt. So if anybody, I know there are a few people out there, if anybody wants to join, the link to join me on the show live and have a bit of a discussion is in the Facebook group. So if you go to iamhercules.community as a link, it'll take you straight to the Facebook group, and you will see the link in there. So I just give people a second to do that, because I know that there were a couple of people. I'm just trying to make sure that I've done all of this correctly. You can post any questions that you might have at this point, or any comments in the YouTube channel, so that I can answer them for you that way, if we're not having anyone on the actual show itself. I'll give you a second to do that, and I'll check if there's anyone waiting to come in. And if you'll give me just a second, I'm going to play some amazing music that my friend Nathan Seiler wrote. You're an intro for my podcasts. So I'm going to play that while I see if I can get this first person in. Oh, it looks like we have someone already. Hello, Ray.
Hey, Hercules, how's it going?
Hello, Ray.
Can you hear me?
Hello. Hello.
No, sounds like you can't.
Hello. Okay, we're having a couple of technical difficulties. Ray, if you are you there?
I'm here.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm here, but it doesn't sound like it's working. I'll try on my phone.
I'm just trying to get Ray in. Thank you so much. The wonders of live. Live. Okay. Okay, I think Ray's, we're finding it a little bit difficult, so I think Ray's going to call in. Just call in using the phone. Okay, I think we're getting a connection here.
Hey, Hercules.
Hey, Ray, I'm sorry, we've had some technical difficulties, but I have you on the phone.
Excellent.
So I don't know if people will be able to hear you. My apologies if they can't. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's I think spot on with what's happening at the moment. And
can people tell me if they can actually hear Ray at all?
I'm just going to try and look on YouTube as well and see if I can. I've got the sound down now, so I'm not causing double sound. But when it comes up, I'll see if I can be heard on YouTube. There we go. I've got YouTube up. Let's see. I'll start talking.
I've got you on the phone.
Sounds like I can be heard. My YouTube's not so good while I'm also on the phone.
Yeah, just turn YouTube off, and we'll see if we can just do this conversation. The live, the technical difficulties. Anyway, I'll repeat what you're saying for people to hear anyway. What are your thoughts?
I know they can hear it. I just checked on YouTube and my voice was coming through, so I've now closed that down.
Okay, great.
So well, it reminds me a lot of something that happened 10 years ago when I met you again, and your suggestion was virtually for me to go into my own cocoon for at least 6 months.
Yeah, there was a long time.
The house that I was in and find somewhere just to live by myself, and learn to not need anybody else and learn to love myself. And that was probably one of the best things that I've ever done for myself. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
That's my pleasure. That's what I'm here for.
And this moment sort of reminds me of it, going back to that, except I'm not by myself anymore. I now have a wife and I have a 2-year-old son. and life is a lot more adventurous and exciting and chaotic at the same time.
Yep.
But I can see from the experience that I had there that for people that do want to use the situation and can use the situation as a cocoon type of environment, then it's an amazing opportunity.
Yeah. What do you think of the idea of when we look at, for example, the idea that there is a mass of side and the way that a tumor squashes a brain to the side? How do you relate to that?
Well, when you say that, I start to get sort of tingles in my head and down my body, which for me is a sign that I've learned sort of happens when I hear truth. Well, that's my interpretation of it.
Yeah.
And I suppose I can feel that, it's been a while since we worked together, and in some ways I feel like I've gone in a direction that's created more mass, and my authentic self has been a bit squashed, and it needs this time to sort of wake me up and say, hey, what are you doing? Where are you going?
Yeah.
So again, I'm thankful for the reminder from the universe or God or wherever this comes from.
Yeah. I mean, it's at least in my experience, when people think about change, they get a sense of excitement when they're finally ready to do something about something, right?
Yes.
And but they don't really realize that the process of change is never, ever, ever pleasant. If you're going through a process and it's wonderful and it's exciting and it feels fantastic, and nothing against a lot of people who do things like go on certain times of retreats and things like that, and it's all about feeling good and connecting and feeling expansive and all of that sort of thing. All of that has its place, but that's not what creates change. If that's the only thing that you've experienced, then change hasn't happened. Change is brutal most of the time, because it's essentially saying to somebody, here is the thing I've relied on to keep you safe, to keep you happy, relatively speaking, to keep you functioning in the world. We're just going to pull that apart right now.
Yeah.
And we're going to tear that apart, and you won't be able to, and afterwards, well, you're not going to need it. So we're going to get rid of it because it's using up resources that your true self needs to use. And so it's always, it's the whole want and need thing, right? People want to grow. People want to be better. But what they need to do is develop the tolerance and the frustration and for discomfort and pain.
Yes. And one of the best things I learned when I was working with you was the analogy of that compared to my training in the gym. So I was going through a lot of stuff which wasn't nice, a lot of stuff, and I suppose my emotional intelligence wasn't my strongest key point there. And the realization that I had was that when I went to the gym, and I have a background in powerlifting, lifting very heavy things for not much reason, for those that don't know. And the whole purpose was to go in there and train till you got to the point where you were in pain and it did hurt, and that's what caused the growth. If I kept going to the gym and just doing the easy stuff that had the nice little feeling of I'm going to the gym,
absolutely,
then wow, great, I'm a gym bunny, but I'm never going to change.
That's exactly right.
And when I had, through your guidance, the realization that, well, this emotional pain and discomfort and horrible feeling is kind of the same as looking at a very heavy deadlift and going, oh, Jesus. Or doing a heavy deadlift and going, oh, my God, that hurt. So my action is going to cause growth, and that's the excitement. Rather, it's like the excitement of doing heavy deadlifts rather than the excitement of, I don't know, getting high on something. It's sort of what I'm relating it to.
That's beautiful. Well, Ray, thank you. Thank you so much. We also have Sherry on the line. So thank you. I appreciate your contribution, and I appreciate you being on the call. And you've always been such an example of somebody who's had the courage to go through this kind of change, and it's such a pleasure to watch your journey. And thank you for letting me be part of it.
Thank you, Doc. Or Hercules.
It's right. People don't know we call each other Doc because you're a doctor of engineering. I'm a doctor of medicine, but that demystifies the whole process.
Yes.
So thank you, Doc. I'll talk to you again some other time. Thanks for being on the call.
You're welcome. Thank you, Hercules.
Bye. And Sherry, are you online?
Hello, I am. Oh,
hello, Sherry.
Hello. I can hear you, but you can't hear me.
Okay, I'm finding it difficult to hear you. I'm having the same issues.
Hello.
Hello there.
Hello. Is that any better?
See, I can hear you very, very faintly.
Don't know if there's any knob that can be twiddled. We could try the phone call technique.
We might have to try the phone hook up again.
Will do.
Okay. I'll talk to you in a second. Obviously, I have a lot to learn about these technical podcasts, the technical side of podcasting. You saw last time with the first one, when you work with a professional like Michael Devon, my good friend, you know, you don't get these kinds of hitches because he knows what he's doing. But I'm very, very grateful for new experiences. So here we go. And my apologies if you can't hear Sherry. Sherry, nice to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
I think you may need to switch off your monitor volume.
Yeah, is that any better?
Yeah, so that we don't get the echo, that's all.
Okay. How's that?
Yes, I think I've just got a message that we can hear you. That's awesome.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? Nice to have you on the call.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
I had a question
about I really like that idea of that space, the void that's left, and waiting for something to come into it. But I struggle with the practicality of the waiting and knowing the difference between doing nothing or sort of waiting constructively, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that's at the very heart of the difficulty. And that's the thing that most people, I guess, struggle with, and myself included. Every person who ever goes through change, I just, as a caveat, it doesn't matter how much you know. I think I've read every possible thing that you could possibly read about anything or studied everything. But when you're going through it, you're just a human being facing your own stuff, right? So knowledge does not equal more comfort or more courage or getting through it better. It just means and it may not be relevant, but in that moment, it's the difficulty of that moment is not that we will break if we just sit there. The difficulty is the fear that if we don't respond to the things that are yelling at us, we will break. Right? And so in that moment, the difficulty for us is that we're sitting there and all the things that we've used to protect ourselves over the years are screaming at us saying, you know, you shouldn't do this. This might happen. This might happen. This might happen. Why are you changing the status quo? We've got it all sorted. What is your problem? Why can't you be happy with this? What is this anyway? And every little negative thing that you've had in your head that you've collected since the uterus, right, is going to come in and try to convince you, because as far as your brain is concerned, as far as your emotions, your reflexes, you've set up a whole lot of reflexes that work for you, at least for the you that you were happy being. And so now they're trying, and they're convincing because they are emotionally invested. So you're not getting an intellectual argument. We say, well, consider this. I know what you're trying to do, but I'm thinking that we may not do this. They're not saying that. They're putting up images of scary tigers with big teeth running at you, and they're trying to push the whole adrenaline thing onto you. And what we said last time, different parts of yourself are starting to emotionally hijack you into safety, thinking that's what they're trying to do. The response to that, and the only way through this point, is if I break, I break. If it's shattered into a million pieces, well, I have a million pieces to look at. Because once you do that and you take, if it's a bit like the old, think of the worst thing that could possibly happen, and if you can be at peace with that, then you can get through it. So for the most part, the worst thing that could possibly happen here in most people's minds is that they lose their sense of self, their sense of identity, their sense of who they think they are, what they think they want. Once you're willing to give that up, then the transformation happens. But we're not, most of us, willing to give that up because we're so invested. We've given ourselves so many arguments and emotions around why those things were worth fighting for, why they're so amazing, and why we should hold on to them, why we should keep them, right? But the truth of it is that it's an illusion. And the big secret, the big reveal at the end of this process is that what was yours, you can never lose. In the same way that you can never really keep what isn't yours. So all you're losing are the things that you've invested in, but are they really for you? Are they really making you happy? Is life really happy? And that's the risk. And that's why people feel vulnerable. That's why there's a sense of faith that's required. That's why all of those things are necessary to be able to just say, you know what? It's okay if I lose what I think is everything. What do you think?
I think I can think of certain aspects of my life where that seems simple enough. It seems simple, but I know it would be difficult. But in one particular aspect of my life, I see myself, and so whether that's a good thing to hold on to or not, as being helpful and fixing things for people around me and being supportive. But I am also starting to see that help or support that I want to give is not necessarily always what someone else wants. And so I'm trying to work against that. But one thing in particular that I'm finding the most stressful about the current situation is the constant are you feeling supported and who are you supporting when that's an area that I struggle with before a pandemic wandered along. So
that little old thing.
Yeah. And so it's that thing again of managing my fear of not doing enough when sometimes doing nothing is the right.
And of course, you're talking about two very important things there. One is taking yourself through a process, but the other one is supporting someone else through that process. And they're two very different things. So in the instance that I guess I've been coming from the angle of taking yourself through a process, and we'll talk through that. What you've just said about supporting others is a really, really important point. But
I feel like taking myself through the process kind of butts right up against others as well.
Yes, absolutely. So the cocoon is about creating a space. The cocoon is just a space. So if we're taking ourselves through a process, we have to explain to significant others that we will be doing a few things differently, that at this time every week, I'm going to sit and I'm going to do this. I'm going to write a journal. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Normally I wouldn't, but can you help space for me to do is give me that hour to myself.
Yeah.
or whatever it might be. It's not,
Yeah.
can you be there for me emotionally? Can you hold me? Blah, blah, blah. Because the minute you do that, you're actually making your process and your progress dependent on something outside of
Yeah.
yourself, which means that even if you get a result, it means the other person has to constantly be there to be part of it. And that isn't really a result, because life doesn't work that way. Even if you spend 50 years with somebody or 60 years with somebody, the longest, most successful relationships, when you talk to people who've been together 60 years, for example, it's people who gave each other the space to go on those individual journeys and stay together with each other while they did it. Right? Rather than the whole, you're there for me, you complete me, you got to help me through this kind of stuff. Right? So that's the first thing, organizing your space to give yourself the permission to go through that and get the other person to help you by holding that space. The second thing in terms of you going through it is to realize that you're the one who is going to go through that stuff, and it's going to bring up stuff for you that is going to color the way you see the world for a little while, and to remember that and to be kind to the people who are holding that space for you, because you will be spewing up stuff that you don't want, that has been under there for a while. To switch metaphors, it's like going into a room that you've been, locking all your stuff in for years and years. The rest of the house is fantastic and clean, but you've never let anyone go near that room because if the door opens, it's going to stink to high heaven. And, but one day you decide, I'm going to go in there, and you say, can you hold the space for me? I'm just going to go clean that room that I haven't cleaned, in a while. And, when you open the door, it's going to stink, where you'll have to, jimmy the windows open to try and get them to open from being stuck. Let some sunlight in, it takes a while to clean that out, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the other person has to adapt to that and not have judgment around it, but you need to be aware that it's stinking for them. Right? So that's that part of it. And in terms of supporting someone else, which to your other point, which is really, really important, and whether, what you can do. I mean, obviously, if you're close to somebody, everything we've just said applies. But in this time of, it's, some people are genuine when they say, how can I support you and help me through this? And some people are not. There's a big marketing machine out there too, which knows how to sell messages, right? And support is a word like authenticity, and all that stuff that gets bandied about, right? Say again, sorry?
Yeah, what support means different things to different people.
That's right. And so support that isn't you being taken advantage of and that's balanced is simply, appropriate for the relationship that you have with that person. Right? So, for example, if I'm in a group of people who are running businesses, right, and what we can do, well, we can meet for half an hour, a week on a Zoom call, for example, and support each other. Just say, hey, how you going? Are you okay? What did you do this week? Keep them accountable. No, you can get it done. Now's the moment, get it done. Okay, see you next week. That's support. Right?
Yeah.
And that's appropriate for the relationship, right? Once you start to feel that you are getting something out of it, that's a danger signal, because that means there's things you're not there's work you're not putting into yourself that you're now feeling better about yourself doing something for someone else, and you run the risk of over supporting somebody
because it makes me feel good.
Correct. And the relationship doesn't support that, and therefore it's inauthentic, and that person is buying into something that isn't really true and lasts so long as that satisfaction feeling lasts in you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I mean, why wouldn't you? When the alternative is not doing the support in inverted commas that makes you feel good, if doing nothing is actually the appropriate thing that makes me feel bad, of course I want to do something and feel good.
Yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, there's a difference between deciding to change something and deciding that you're going to do something to feel good. A lot of people right now are going, you know what? I haven't had a break, damn it. I haven't slept bit of a break, you know, and yes, it's come this way, but I deserve this and I deserve that, and I should be feeling good about this and I should be feeling good about that. And they think that way, but all they're really doing is adding to the list of things that are in that comfort zone, you know, and they may have their stuff together, you know, and it may be an appropriate position for them to take. But for most people, it's an escape. And that's how we escape a lot of this. That's why so many of us live with metaphorical brain tumors all our life, with, you know, compromised metaphorical brain function. And we live a life that we can live only from that decreased functional state. And then the pain that we know deep down inside isn't right, we compensate that with a few little, you know, comfort things, little addictions, whatever. Nothing too bad, nothing that other people aren't doing, you know, nothing terrible.
Yeah.
Status quo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that help, or have I depressed you?
No. Sorry, that's my thinking noise. That's the noise where I now have to stop myself going and finding 18 books on this topic that I can read to feel like I'm doing something. And now I just have to go and sit and feel a bit icky and uncomfortable and unfamiliar for a moment.
Yeah.
And let it pass and let it smash into a million pieces or not.
Yeah.
It might only smash into 2 or 3.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? You and I and, you know, our friends and families, they're not the first or only people to ever go through this. Humanity has gone through this for as long as there has been humanity. And and historically, the good news is that when people do go through this, they're always in a quiet place, in a place that takes very little energy, because it's so them. It doesn't cost them anything. And as I said to you, in the same way that only after the rehab period with a brain tumor does a person feel the gratitude, the sense of relief, you know, that elation, because it's only then that they realize, oh my goodness, I had all this. I didn't realize that I was compromised so much. It's only then that comes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder, like, sticking with this metaphor, if maybe another topic in the future could be that kind of rehab, because when I read an inspirational story, an biography or something about, oh, you know, this terrible thing happened and now people are in this better, more authentic place, I always want to know, yeah, but what were some of the specific steps? I had an illness a couple of years and in an emotionally better place. I'm physically in a better place, but I think I skipped big chunks of that rehab because I just got back to being what I thought, in inverted commas, was normal. And I'd had to take time off work, which was a very strange thing for me. So I not only got back to work, but I'd been working part-time before, so I got back to full-time work. I studied, I changed jobs. So I did a lot of outward rehab. I did some inward rehab as well, but looking at this conversation and this idea and now having all of this time to think more, I'm thinking that there's probably big chunks of that rehab that I missed, that I didn't know existed.
Yeah. And I just want to interject there to put a thought into your head. This sort of stuff defies logic. Because
logic so much.
And I know you, I know your arguments with you are formidable. But the one thing about this process is that there is a paradox to it. And all of these kinds of things, we try to solve, you know, whole being with one part of ourselves. Some of us try to use the intellect and we try to reason our way. And well, if this, then that, and if this, then that, and then this should happen. And of course, that's a constant disappointment unless we control everything in life. Right. And some of us go to the emotional place, you know, and I'm going to feel this and I'm going to feel that. I'm going to feel elated. I'm going to do this and I'm just going to breathe in, you know, white light and the universe and all that kind of stuff. Right. To do the same thing. And other of us go to physical things, to addictions. You know, I'm going to, you know, do more of this, go to the gym, you know, 8 hours a day, every day of the year. right? Not appropriate. I'm just talking over the top, and to the point that we're using it to kind of self-anesthetize the pain, right? But all of this stuff is paradoxical. The beauty of this, and the biggest risk we take, is to trust that if we let go, the answer will come. Because transformation, to go back to the, I love metaphor, to go back to the butterfly metaphor, realization, transformation is like a butterfly in itself. You can't catch a butterfly by chasing it. You only sit there for long enough and become the thing that is most attractive to the butterfly that is meant to settle on you. And then it just comes and sits on you.
I have a much less classical, but an example from the animal kingdom of watching my big fat ginger cat sit in the sun lazily outside one day. And something caught his eye and he sat still, and it's the animal kingdom, so someone's going to die. A beautiful dragonfly was whipping around the garden, and he sat there and sat so still for long enough that poor little dragonfly wandered across his path and got completely chomped.
There you go. The wisdom of your big fat ginger cat. Yeah. And it's, this stuff,
if he tried to leap at it, he never would have got that if he tried to
and the dragonfly would have flown away, etc. And that's the paradox of all of this stuff. That's why when you look at it like this, I mean, if you look at what I said today, is it incredibly intellectually difficult? If you think about it, there's a mass, it's taking a thing, it's squashing, it's decreasing function, we take it out, there's rehabilitation, bada bing, you feel better, there's better function, right? These are not high concepts. But change is as difficult as it is easy. And that then enters the realm, it leaves the realm of emotions and intellect and physical cravings and desires and sensations, and goes into the world of wisdom, right? Where you can see the difference in understanding that statement. You have to pull together two things that seemingly don't make sense. How can something be easy and difficult at the same time? Because it's incredibly complex to go through change, but the simpler we keep it, the more we give into the process, the less we expect things to happen in a way that we recognize them and can tick off steps. It happens, the better it happens for us, and the more real and the more lasting that change is.
And so for me, who always wants to know, but what's the actual practical bloody thing I'm supposed to do there? Is it as simple as, I'm just feeling this now because this has changed, just hold tight for literally 5 minutes? No,
it's even simpler than that. It's just saying to yourself, I have made a decision that I want everything that's true about me to come forward, and everything that's not to slowly kind of go into the background and realize it's not needed anymore. I've made that decision. And just say to yourself, I trust you. I trust you to be on that journey with me. Thank you. And that's it.
Okay.
And leave that feel good you've done that, and then go, so it's been a few days, so I'm looking for some difference here, some change, something, some insight. Give me an insight. No, because the difference about this, unlike mechanical processes, like for example, a brain tumor, which is a physical thing, that can have times. At this time we go to surgery. At this time we come out of, recovery. At this time we're in the ward. At this time we start rehab. At this time we go home, right?
Yeah.
This stuff doesn't have the right time. It only has the right moment.
Okay.
And there are lots of other things that we're not aware of that need to happen so that when you get that insight, you can act on it, that it's the right thing for you in that moment. And we're not aware of those things at all, which is the difference. If we were aware of them, we could go to the intellect and say, okay, those things are happening over there. Check, 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 check. those chart. Okay, this is dependent on that. Once that happens, these 3 things are happening. Check, check, check. Yeah, feel good about that. So it'll be 3 months before I get an insight, but I know that it's going to happen because I can see every little component. Every little component.
That sounds like bliss.
That sounds like bliss. To somebody who could look at a spreadsheet and not feel like they have a tumor. Yes. That sounds like bliss.
Sign me up.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas all we get is the one little component that we can't even control, that we have to trust, while trusting all the others are happening. And then when the critical mass happens and they all come together, wow, at that point. And then that wow, by the way, that's just an emotional expression. The reality of insight is that it's just a very quiet thing. You just have a moment and you suddenly realize something. Intellectual arguments, the wow, all of that are reactions to that insight. But the insight itself is never emotionally charged. It's not some big highfalutin complex, Einsteinian thing that needs to be reduced down to E equals MC squared or something like that. It's just, oh, okay, wow. And it's so profound, you can't go back from there. There's a piece of you now that has changed forever. Now you work on the next piece. And life is a progression of slowly all the pieces align. And then there's a critical mass of aligned, authentic pieces within ourselves where we can then express the truth of what we are in the different contexts of our life, whether they're personal, professional, etc. Right? That is the process. Things that unfortunately in the voice of the zeitgeist are not popular things, because we want things right now.
Yeah.
Where this is a world of immediate gratification, a world of control, a world of self-empowerment, a world of I decide, therefore, and all those things ultimately don't make people happy. They can make people secure if they're successful. But I can tell you, I know a lot of very, 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 very unhappy, empty, incredibly wealthy from a financial point of view and successful people. Right? Why are they empty?
Yeah.
It's because they've never stopped to do this. They've just spent their life trying to do the other thing and trying to compete against everyone to make sure they get it first and that they always succeed and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I say, if you're aware of this process, if all we did as an exercise, the people who are listening today and the people who will listen in the future is imagined the brain with a lump, the lump coming out, the brain slowly re-expanding, the body getting better function, slowly, I can trust my legs now. Now I can walk without falling. Now I can run a little bit. All of that, if we just visualize that and accepted that that was our reality for whatever problem we had, as a metaphor, that'll sink into our subconscious and our brains and our cells will go to work. We don't have to know the details. There's too many details. Subconsciously, you are in this moment the collection of every single thought, emotion, interpretation of a thought, interpretation of an emotion that you've had since you were conscious. Right? So for you to go in there, you change all of that. It is absolutely impossible. But if you trust the same entity that housed all of that to go do that, i.e. your brain, your subconscious, it's going to happen because you've now set it as your intention. You've now set it as the thing that you want your being to do.
Yeah.
And it starts to go to work, and then you start getting insights and you start getting aha moments and blah, blah, blah. And the problem there is to make sure that you don't act on any of those immediately, that you wait until enough of them collect so that you can have a clear understanding of what's happening. Because people then start to get excited. Oh, look, oh my God, I've never thought that before. And now I know this, and now I understand that. And they then go off another intellectual tangent, and their afraid false self takes over and says, okay, we've got this new information, but remember where we were? So now let's just incorporate that new information to where we were and make a better false self.
Yeah.
And then people will feel good about that because now there's a little bit of truth in there, but they've now moved away from the truth. Right? Does that make sense?
It does. And just that for me, who wants a particular sort of thing to latch onto, latching onto the human metaphor just to remind myself, and that the thing to do is to just let it happen. All I had to do was make that choice, and that's the only thing I can consciously do.
Yeah, and the reason. Oh, sorry, Sherry, go on.
I would just make the decision and trust the decision.
That's right.
And be open to seeing things change, but not forcing them. Yeah,
and look, the reason I put those MRIs up there, by the way, is because I wanted people to have a visual looks like, brain looks like, what it looks like to have stuff that isn't part of your true self inside you.
Yeah.
Not that that's, don't get me wrong, just before a disclaimer, I'm not saying that it physically, that the meningioma is the seat of your bad stuff or anything like that. Well, I'm saying it's a metaphor, right? People understand that. I have to make that absolutely clear. Yeah. But as a visual, it's like your self is being squashed to the side and pressurized up against the exterior, which is your skull, which is there to protect you. But you're feeling more and more pressure as the tumor gets bigger and bigger, as your false self expands more and more and more.
Yeah.
Right. So if you think of it that way, and you just focus on the good brain, on the normal brain, so to speak, just the brain, you then start to realize that, oh, okay, I don't need to carry this. And then on this spooky level of subconscious, which has a much bigger conversation and deep, if not for now, in the same way that a surgeon removes the tumor and allows your brain tissue to re-expand, so to speak, right? It's the same way that mass will dissolve because it'll be resolved by the brain. It's no longer useful stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, it'll be packaged away different ways. And then slowly that decreases and decreases. And you end up with, your brain filling in your skull the way it's meant to be, comfortable. And then things feel so easy. And if we're used to fighting for stuff all the time, that's another trap, not to start going, why is this so easy? What am I meant to be doing now? Just sitting here, right? And then you go through the same process again, right? The truth takes time. It's as simple as that. Any good thing takes time. Okay? You go out to the garden, start chewing the one thing. If you want to cook a stew, you got to collect the ingredients, you got to wash them, you got to dice them up a certain way, you got to put them. It takes a certain amount of time. If it's a slow cooker, it might take 8 hours, right? It's going to take time, right? To go through all of that. If you want to learn something, go to a degree at a university. You can't show up for a week and say, okay, let's get this stuff done because, I want the degree next week. Well, you might want the degree next week, but it's going to take 3 years for you to get that degree because it takes time to, put all that information in a certain way that you can have an incremental understanding and therefore be able to use that information for whatever it is that you're trying to do. For me being a doctor, it took time. It wasn't enough to finish a degree. I had to go through, working as an intern, then working as a house officer and blah, 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 et cetera, until I had more and more experience and my knowledge and my experience would come together and then, and so on and so on and so on and so on. Everything that's actually useful takes time. So why do we want to sit down for a weekend, think about our stuff, and to logically make it go away? Doesn't make sense.
No.
Anyway, I'm mindful of the time. We've reached
thank you.
an hour. No, my absolute thanks, Jerry. That was wonderful, and thanks to both you and for Ray for being on. I think I'm going to wrap up soon. Because I've got a few other calls and things I've got to do this morning. But thank you so much for everybody being on. Thank you, Sherry. I'm just going to take you off at the moment, and we'll talk soon. So I want to thank everybody for being part of this today. It was it's always a privilege for me to talk to people about what they're going through at any particular point. I really appreciate you. Please give me your feedback on these presentations. I mean, technically, I know I've got a long way to go, but I'm experimenting with different platforms, and this is only my second one. And I'm trying to find my podcast voice, because I think I'm feeling that I need to do a podcast at some point. I think that this is where that's leading. Because my life as a doctor at the moment, you can imagine going in and out of hospital all the time is a bit up and down. If you just go to the Facebook group to leave your comments, that gives me just one place where I can check for them. So I've created a link, imhercules.community. If you go in there and become a member of the actual group, I'll post up a lot of things there as we go through, and as I have time to create more things and keep you updated with everything. And, you know, if you have any questions about today's live stream, any comments, please put them. And I'll be happy to talk about any issues that they are going through at the moment, or anything that you know that comes to your head that you want to talk about. But today was really just about understanding that you are more than your current state. We have an opportunity right now to explore that a little bit and to find out what are the things that are not serving us, that are still taking up resources that we could otherwise spend with a re-expanded self, and, you know, to serve our purpose. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to do one last technical thing and play the outro music. And I will see you at the next one of this, whenever that'll be, and on whatever platform that'll be. But all that information will be up in the Facebook group. Thank you so very, 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 very much. And I'll talk to all of you soon.